Caseus. Jedi Redeemed. Chapter 15. Caseus and Guidome watched in horror as their ships were taken into the skies towards the Star Destroyer.
Damn it. This is bad.
Dotame chuckled.
You really should have hidden the ships better.
Caseus turned swiftly to the Grand and backhanded him with a closed fist, knocking him down. Caseus, calm down. We need to think.
Think about what? We have to get them out of there.
How do you even know they're alive?
Think about it. The Empire knows they're rebels. They're not going to execute them until they give over any information they have. We have to get up there before it's too late.
Pip walked over.
But how? There's no way we're getting on board without clearance.
Caseus thought for a moment and opened the hatch leading back to the underground.
Caseus, wait!
Caseus ran through the tunnels and soon found himself back in the town where he was stopped at gunpoint by 3 Rotofall guards.
Stop right there. I have to speak to Kev. It's an emergency. You were told to leave and forget you saw this place.
Caseus was getting frustrated.
Let me through now.
What's going on here?
Caseus saw Vec approaching.
Vec, we need help.
I thought I told you that
our comrades have been taken by the Empire. They're going to be tortured and killed. We need to get on board the Star Destroyer.
Star Destroyer? What do you mean, Star Destroyer?
They found our ships and our men. They're being transported up there as we speak. If we don't get them out of there, they'll be tortured and executed.
Vec looked around.
Who else knows that you are on Terrace?
The rebel leaders and you. Maybe a few people from the bar that saw my face.
Vec sighed in frustration.
You're better off hopping a ship off-world, Jedi. Getting up there is going to be trouble enough. Getting them out will be nearly impossible.
I was trapped on Kessel for nearly 4 years before they broke me out, Vec. I'm not going to let them suffer after what they've done for me. Now let me speak to Kef.
What exactly do you think speaking to him will accomplish?
More than talking to you will. Now step aside.
Vec pulled his blaster and aimed at Caseus.
You're not speaking to Kef. You've caused enough trouble as is. Get out now.
Caseus activated his lightsaber and pointed it towards Vec.
I wasn't asking.
Caseus was soon surrounded by other members of Rotofall who pointed their weapons at him. He was outnumbered.
This is your last chance. Leave, now.
Caseus looked around as he heard the sounds of blasters charging.
How safe are you here, Vec? It won't be long until the Empire finds you.
I'll take that risk.
What the hell is going on here?
Kef walked over, accompanied by 2 guards.
Starting trouble, Jedi. Big mistake.
Kef, I need your help. Our friends have been taken by the Empire. If we don't get them out of that Star Destroyer, they'll be executed and the rebellion will be at stake.
I hardly see how that's my problem.
It will be if the Empire discovers that they're rebels. They're going to crack down on Terrace even harder and root out any signs of insurgency. They'll find this place, and they'll find you and all these families here, and you'll all be killed.
Kef glared at Caseus with his deep yellow eyes.
Then you have brought the Empire upon us.
Caseus heard the blasters prepare to fire as Rotofall's troops surrounded him.
Kill the Jedi.
Before a shot could be fired, a bone-chilling scream echoed through the underground city, followed by the distinct sounds of Imperial blaster fire. Caseus and Vec looked towards the streets and saw stormtroopers flooding the town, rounding up citizens and firing upon Rotofall soldiers.
Take formations!
Kef and his men readied their weapons and ran towards the invading Imperials, opening fire upon them and filling the air with flashes of red and green blaster fire. Caseus thought for a moment to run, rejoin with Guidome and find a way to their friends, until he saw families huddled together in fear, and Rotofall men dying to defend them. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out and saw men from Rotofall taking cover behind makeshift barricades, firing out where they could. Children huddled with their mothers and fathers, as others tended to the wounded. At least 30 troopers were closing in, firing at houses and the barricades. Caseus kept calm and walked past the barricade and activated his lightsaber. He was now staring directly ahead at the invading Imperials. The firing stopped momentarily as the shaken troopers looked to their commander.
Kill the Jedi!
The words had only just left his mouth before the stormtroopers opened fire on Caseus. As though purely on instinct, Caseus swatted every blast away from him as he moved closer to his enemies.
Full force!
The blasts became more and more intense, yet Caseus remained as calm as ever. His movements were fluid and graceful. In his mind, he was back at the temple deflecting blasts from the training droids.
Everyone get back!
Caseus looked ahead as the thermal detonator was thrown his way. Before he could react, the bomb was lifted in the air by an unseen force and sent flying into the air where it detonated and shook the area. Gaidom emerged and activated his lightsaber and joined Caseus. The troopers attempted to retreat, but Caseus collapsed one of the damaged buildings in front of the troopers, trapping them. A few more troopers stood their ground and fired as their blasts were deflected back into their hands and shoulders. Rodafal emerged from their cover and aimed their weapons, surrounding the Imperial soldiers. Caseus and Gaidom approached the commander, blades pointed out. The commander slowly dropped his weapon and raised his arms.
Kef, what do we do with them?
Hold them prisoner for now. Our location is compromised. We need to evacuate.
Vec nodded and turned to the people.
Everyone take only what you need. We have to evacuate Terrace.
Caseus walked to Vec as Rodafal began to aid families or restrain their new prisoners.
How exactly do you plan on getting these people off the system?
Vec gave Caseus a cold stare and continued walking.
We can help each other, Vec. Just like I helped you here today.
Helped? Because of you, our entire operation is at risk. Who's going to help these families now?
The Alliance will.
Vec looked to Gaidom.
You said you need to evacuate Terrace. If that's your plan, you'll need a transport.
We have a transport. We don't need to rely on the rebellion for aid.
Caseus stepped forward.
Maybe not. But look at your people. Is this any way for them to live? The Alliance and I haven't seen eye to eye in the past. But I know they can help relocate all of these families to safer places. Places where they won't have to live underground.
Vec looked at the wounded, and to the filthy street now covered in smoldering blaster holes.
What do you need from us?
All we need is a way to get into that Star Destroyer and get our friends. After that, the Alliance will provide you with whatever you need.
Vec nodded.
Okay, what exactly is your plan when you get up there?
Sneak in, find where they are, and get them out.
How do you intend on sneaking in?
With the aid of Stealth Master Extraordinaire Pip.
The others looked to Pip, who was hauling Dotame along by a rope latched around his neck.
Do you know anything about Imperial crafts?
Sure. Ever since I started working with the Alliance, I've accumulated all sorts of useful data.
And how do you plan on getting there?
We take the Imperial transport those troopers arrived in. If you can spare a few men and a few sets of armor from those troopers, we'll take care of the rest. Once we have everyone off that ship, we'll send you coordinates to a rendezvous in the Outer Rim. You can get your people to safety and talk to the rebels about relocation.
Vec nodded.
I'll talk to Kef. He has final say in this.
As Vec ventured to Kef's domicile, Gaidom stepped beside Caseus.
Do you think Kef will agree to this? I don't know if he has much of a choice. If he doesn't, the chances of them getting off-world are slim.
Well, we're gonna have to act quick. Bandel and the others are in trouble. Once we get them out, we need to hightail it back to the Alliance. We can look for those contacts at a later date.
Caseus looked over through the window at Vec speaking to Kef, and over to the other members of Rodafal aiding families in carrying belongings.
I don't think we'll have to. I think we found them.
What do you mean?
I think the contacts Rondo wanted us to find were Rodafal. I thought it was those guys in the bar, but Rondo knew the Alliance needed numbers. If we were to get the aid of a syndicate like them, they could be a huge asset.
You really think that's what Rondo meant?
I can't be certain, but I have a feeling I'm right.
Well, hopefully they decide to join. We could use them.
Vec soon approached alongside Kef.
Vec told me your plan. Before I can give you an answer, I need to be sure that you are certain this will work.
There's no certainty in situations like this. Only trust. I'm willing to trust you. Are you willing to trust me?
Kef hesitated, but looked to the others and the now damaged town.
Seems I don't have much of a choice. I'll assemble a group. Be quick.
On board the Star Destroyer, Bendel, Kresh, Tosa, and the others were all thrown into holding cells.
Oh, splendid. I just love a good cage.
No time for jokes, Tosa. Let's try and figure out a way out of here.
In case you haven't noticed, they confiscated our gear. Do you expect me to claw through solid metal?
I expect you to shut up and help me look for a way to shut down these ray shields. We need something that can disrupt the beam and...
The door suddenly opened as an officer walked in.
Who is in charge of this band of insurgents?
No one spoke.
Speak up. I'm losing my patience.
Bendel stood.
I am. Oh, how wonderful. Then you have the honor of meeting your gracious host.
Bendel was dragged out of the cell and led to another room at the end of a dark hallway, where he was strapped to a table. As he struggled, a figure stepped through the doorway, accompanied by a probe droid. Bendel's blood ran cold. For the first time in his life, the young man was speechless and terrified.
No.
Down below, Caseus and the others boarded the Imperial craft with Vec and a few men provided by Kef, donned in stolen armor from the troopers they had captured. Dotame was kept in his restraints, sitting quietly as Caseus glared at him.
You really believe dragging me along is a good idea, Caseus?
If we leave you here, you'll just find a way to weasel yourself out and inform the Empire of our plan. Don't worry. I have something that'll keep you out of trouble.
What? Do you intend to bribe me?
Caseus removed a syringe from his belt and injected it into Dotame's neck as he slowly passed out.
No. Just take you out of commission until we finish. Guidome, stick him in the supply room.
Guidome nodded, grabbing Dotame's limp body and shoving him into a compartment meant to hold maintenance supplies and cleaning implements before shutting the door. As soon as they were secure and ready, the ship took off into the sky towards the imposing Star Destroyer. Caseus took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Guidome looked at him.
You feel it too?
Vader. I sense the anger. The cold.
Me too. We have to be quick.
As they drew nearer to the Star Destroyer, the comm system beeped as a voice could be heard.
Transport 764D, state your business and clearance code.
Guidome looked at the code stolen from the previous pilot.
Delivery of essential supplies and maintenance gear from Terrace Station 12A, access code 86521.
There was a pause, and Guidome began to sweat.
Transport 764D, you are cleared to board. Proceed to the main hangar.
Caseus breathed a small sigh of relief. They soon reached the underside of the Star Destroyer and gently landed on board as a few stormtroopers stood outside the ramp. Caseus looked to Vec as he and Guidome hid in large supply crates.
Stick to the plan. We'll get our friends out. You locate the Arabella and the rebel transport.
Vec nodded as the ramp opened, and the stormtroopers stepped aboard, giving the craft a brief inspection before ushering the disguised Rotafall members off and hauling the two supply crates onto floating cargo transports. As Caseus felt himself being moved down the ramp, he pulled out his comlink and whispered into it.
Okay, Pip. This should be taking us to the maintenance bay. Do your thing. Get to the bridge as fast as you can and shut down the security cameras.
Roger that, Captain.
On board the craft they arrived in, Pip emerged from his hiding spot and made his way off the ramp and into the hangar.
Okay, let's see. If I remember correctly, ventilation shafts are the quickest way to get through unnoticed. Let's see.
Looking around the hangar, he saw an entrance to the vents above a few crates.
Perfect.
Running to the crates, Pip climbed on top and reached the vent cover, which he quickly removed before climbing inside. Meanwhile, Caseus and Guidome finally came to a stop as they reached the maintenance bay. Listening, he heard voices outside.
What are these?
Supplies sent by 12A.
I didn't put in a request.
Well, who did?
I don't know, maybe TK 2093. I'll check later. At least we have some new supplies. I'll take it from here.
The door opened and closed as the trooper left, and Caseus heard his crate being opened. Just as the lid was being lifted, another voice called out.
Hey, boss! I need your help over here. These new thermal systems are melting the coating on the wires.
This is what happens when your budget gets cut. I'm coming. You buy cheap parts and you pay the price later.
Caseus breathed a sigh of relief as he heard the trooper leave the room. Silently, he and Guidome lifted the lids from their crates and stepped out, looking around. No cameras that they could see. That was a bit of luck at least. Quickly, they stepped out of view and hid as Caseus contacted Pip again.
Pip, how close are you?
Almost there. Won't be long now. Just leave it to me.
Hurry, Pip, we don't have much time.
Meanwhile, Vec and the others were being led down the corridors of the Star Destroyer. To where they weren't told, but Vec knew they wouldn't be safe for long. The commanding officer spoke to them as they walked.
Is there a particular reason you lot were transferred here? I must say it was awfully short notice.
It's not my job to ask questions, sir.
Right you are. Still, the circumstances are quite peculiar.
Once we have you stationed, I'll have a few questions for you all.
If you don't mind me asking, where exactly are you taking us?
I thought it wasn't your job to ask questions. Vec remained silent, his finger close to the trigger of his blaster. Meanwhile, Pip reached the vent cover overlooking the bridge below. Officers and engineers were all over the place. He'd have to cause a distraction. Reaching to his pouch, he pulled out a few small round metal balls and discreetly tossed them down. Upon impact, the balls released a foul-smelling odor as the officers on the bridge began to sniff the air and gasp and cough. It wasn't long before the bridge was evacuated and Pip hopped down. He would have to act fast. They would send someone up to investigate any moment. Running to the security console, he looked at the screens and saw the rebels inside one of the cell blocks. Taking note, he started to deactivate the cameras on each level. Soon, the entire ship was on a security blackout. Reaching to his comlink, he contacted Caseus.
Okay, Captain. They're in cell block 7C. Cameras are deactivated. I'll shut down the doors to the bridge to give you a little extra time, but you need to hurry.
Roger that, Pip. Get back to the transport once the others are free. I'll meet you back there.
Caseus looked to Guidome.
Okay, we get Bendel and the others out. Once Vec and his men find the Arabella and the rebel transport, take them and get out of here. I'll head back to Pip and Dotame and get us out with the troop freighter.
Guidome nodded as they began to sneak through the ship as best as they could. As they rounded a corner, they saw two troopers. Before either of them noticed the Jedi, Caseus pulled Guidome back around the corner.
Did you see something?
No, why?
Never mind. Let's just finish up here so we can call it a night.
The troopers moved on as Caseus poked his head out.
Okay, we're clear. Come on.
Meanwhile, Vec and his men were brought to another hangar where several troopers were underway tearing apart the rebel transport and beginning to work on the Arabella.
Grab a tool and get to work. These vehicles need to be scrapped by night's end.
As the officer left to go speak with a few of his peers, Vec reached to his comlink and contacted Caseus.
Caseus, you better hurry. The troopers are busy scrapping the ships. Hangar B. We'll try to stall as long as we can, but hurry.
Okay, we're nearing the detention level. Do whatever you can.
Vec grabbed a tool and looked at his men.
Follow my lead.
As he stepped over to the Arabella, he began to remove a few insignificant pieces of the interior. Turning to one of the troopers, he pretended to struggle with a piece before letting go and smacking the trooper square in the face.
Ah! Oh, my bad. Didn't mean to hit you.
Clumsy idiot!
The trooper threw a punch at Vec as they began to brawl outside of the Arabella, attracting the attention of other troopers who came over to investigate. Vec's men soon began to start brawls of their own, and soon a large skirmish of troopers hitting each other started in the hangar, drawing the attention of the officer.
Cease this nonsense! What is going on?
Vec looked at the officer.
This trooper here attacked me out of nowhere.
I did not! You hit me in the face!
No, I didn't.
Enough! No one is going anywhere until we sort this out.
Meanwhile, Pip was making his way through the ventilation shaft when he heard a sound. A floating Imperial security droid had rounded the corner of the vent and caught sight of him.
Uh-oh.
The droid began to flee as Pip ran over. Jumping on top of it. The panicking security probe began to speed up and fly through the vents, smashing into the steel walls and taking different turns and twists before Pip managed to smash his metal hand through its eye and send himself and the damaged droid tumbling down a separate vent and landing with a loud clatter through a vent cover into an empty corridor.
Whoa, what a ride!
Looking to his belt, he saw that his comlink had been damaged from the fall.
Not good.
With no other option, Pip continued down the long metal corridor. Caseus and Guidome reached the detention level and came across a group of stormtroopers guarding the doors to the cell block.
Hey! You're not authorized to be here!
Caseus quickly drew his blaster and fired at the troopers, striking down 2 of them before they returned fire. Guidome deflected the shots back into their chest plates, ending the other 2. After dealing with the troopers, Caseus ran to the cell block door and cut through the controls with his lightsaber. The doors opened as they ran down the cell block hall until they heard arguing and mumbles. In the cell, Tosa grumbled and hissed.
This isn't how I wanted to spend my last days.
Caseus turned the corner and stepped in front of the cell as the rebels looked in shock.
No one likes a whiner, Tosa.
Kresh roared in excitement as Tosa rolled his eyes.
About damn time.
Where's Bendel?
Kresh moved aside and gestured to an unconscious Bendel beside him. Caseus looked in shock.
What did they do?
Probe droid. He's gonna be out for a while.
Caseus looked to the ray shield controls and shut them down, allowing the rebels and the crew of the Arabella to step out.
Kresh, carry Bendel.
Kresh nodded and lifted Bendel over his shoulders. As Guidome kept a lookout for more stormtroopers, Caseus contacted Vec.
Vec, we have them. Clear the area and get the ships ready.
Vec smirked.
Finally.
Aiming his blaster, Vec fired at the officer, killing him quickly, before he and his men quickly ducked behind whatever cover they could and began taking out the stormtroopers in the hangar.
Get to the ship! Man the guns! Reinforcements will be coming!
As Vec and his men ran into the Arabella to man the guns, Caseus ran with the others into the main corridor. As the rebels picked up the guns of the downed guards, Caseus turned to Guidome.
Guidome, get them to Hangar B. I'll be right behind you guys.
Be careful, Caseus. If Vader is here, there's no doubt he's caught wind of what's going on. Hurry.
Caseus nodded and sprinted down the halls as Guidome led the rebels forward.
Hangar B, let's go!
They ran as fast as they could, blasting a few stormtroopers who got in their path. As they got closer to the hangar, hearing sounds of chaos and blaster fire, the alarms blared. The security systems had activated. The entire ship knew they were there.
Guidome!
Guidome turned and saw Pip running over.
Pip, what are you doing here?
I got a little sidetracked. Let's go!
Pip joined the rebels as they soon reached the hangar, where a platoon of stormtroopers were firing at the Arabella as Vec and his men blasted away at them from the ramp and turrets. Kresh and Tosa quickly fired as well as they made a dash for the Arabella. The rebel transport was in no condition to fly, but the Arabella thankfully had not been stripped as severely. Running up the ramp, Kresh set Bendel down before running to his cot and pulling out his spare buster cannon from underneath. As the Ithorian brute stepped onto the ramp, he opened fire on the stormtroopers. This, along with the fire from the rebels, Rotafall, and the turret, was enough to cause a temporary retreat from the Imperials.
Go! Get this ship in the air!
As Tosa rushed into the cockpit, Guidome contacted Caseus.
We're on board the Arabella. Hurry and get out!
Caseus sprinted and reached the main hangar.
I'm almost at the transport. Whatever racket Vec and his men caused, it certainly got their attention. Get out and meet at the rendezvous.
As Caseus rushed into the hangar and on board the transport, he saw that the room where he had left Dotame unconscious was empty. His heart skipped a beat as he ran out of the ship and looked around. Dotame was still restrained, and the effects of that sedative wouldn't have worn off fast. He couldn't have gotten far. Just then, he heard the sound of a blaster powering up and jumped as a blast flew right by his hand, hitting the hilt of his saber and knocking it away. Turning around, Caseus saw Dotame standing in front of a blast door, aiming a stormtrooper's blaster at him. Caseus sneered.
I don't think so, Urshan. You're not going anywhere.
I'd put that blaster down if I were you, Dotame.
No. I've suffered enough disgrace at your hands, Caseus. I think it's time I finally put an end to this little game. And after I kill you, I'll be sure to inform the Empire all about that hidden rebel base.
Caseus glared, keeping his hand on his blaster.
So, why don't you make this easy on yourself and...
Caseus froze in fear as Dotame dropped his weapon and clutched at his throat in pain. Suddenly, the blast door behind Dotame opened as a cloaked figure stepped out, hand raised in a tight fist. Dotame gurgled, managing to release one final pathetic squeak before his neck snapped and he dropped to the floor, dead as a stone. Caseus looked from Dotame to the figure, stepping forward, clad in black, an aura of darkness surrounding them. A woman with fiery red hair. Cassius' heart sank.
Liara.